The invitation arrived in a black envelope, sealed with crimson wax. The card inside was heavy, its edges embossed with gold, and the words were written in a script so elegant it felt ancient. You are cordially invited to an exclusive wine tasting event at Black Hollow Vineyard. Saturday, 8 p.m. Formal attire required. Black Hollow Vineyard. I'd heard the name whispered in wine circles, always in tones of awe or unease. It was legendary and reclusive, known for producing wines so exquisite that collectors would pay obscene amounts for a single bottle. But it wasn't just the quality that gave the vineyard its mystique. It was the secrecy. No one knew who owned it, and no one I knew had ever been there. Yet, here I was, holding an invitation. The card had no RSVP instructions, but when Saturday came, a sleek car appeared outside my apartment without warning. The driver, dressed in a dark suit, stepped out and opened the door. "Miss Evelyn," he said, his tone polite but clipped. "We've come to escort you." The drive was silent and disorienting. We left the city behind and wound through dark, twisting roads bordered by thick forests. The moon was a faint sliver in the sky, and the only light came from the car's headlights. After what felt like hours, the road opened into a wide clearing. Black Hollow Vineyard stretched before us, its rows of vines eerily symmetrical, disappearing into the darkness. Beyond them, a sprawling estate loomed, a mansion made of dark stone, its windows glowing faintly from within. As the car stopped, I noticed other guests arriving. They stepped out of cars as elegant as mine, their attire sharp and expensive. Despite their polished appearances, they moved with a strange stiffness, their faces too pale. The mansion doors were opened by a pair of attendants dressed in black. "Welcome," one of them said, their voices smooth as polished glass. Inside, the air was cool and fragrant, carrying a faint, heady sweetness that made my head swim. The room was vast, its high ceilings adorned with chandeliers that glimmered like ice. A grand staircase wound upward, and at the center of the room stood a table laden with glasses of wine, their deep crimson hues catching the light. A woman greeted me, her dress flowing like liquid silver. She had dark eyes that seemed to pierce straight through me. "Miss Evelyn," she said, her smile revealing perfect, gleaming teeth. "We've been expecting you." "Thank you for the invitation," I said hesitantly. "The vineyard is beautiful." Her smile widened. "I think you'll find our offerings unforgettable. Please enjoy yourself." The wine was unlike anything I'd ever tasted. Each sip was a revelation, rich and complex, with notes I couldn't quite place. The flavors lingered on my tongue, growing stronger instead of fading, and a strange warmth spread through me. As I mingled with the other guests, I noticed something peculiar. No one seemed to drink as much as they held their glasses. They swirled the wine, admired its color, even raised it to their lips, but few actually sipped. A man in a sharp black suit approached me. He was older, with silver hair and piercing green eyes that seemed too bright. "First time at Black Hollow?" he asked, his voice smooth and low. "Yes," I admitted. "It's incredible here." He chuckled softly. "It's a privilege, to be sure. But tell me, Miss Evelyn, have you noticed it yet?" "Noticed what?" I asked, frowning. His smile was thin. "There, the way it humps. The vines, how they seem to breathe. And the wine," he swirled the liquid in his glass, its deep red hue almost black in the dim light. "The wine does more than please the palate." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking, but his gaze remained fixed, unblinking. "You'll see," he said cryptically, walking away before I could respond. Later in the evening, guests were invited for a tour of the vineyard. The moon had risen higher, casting the rows of vines in silvery light. As the group strolled along the dirt paths, our guide spoke of the vineyard's legacy, how its origins stretched back centuries, though no records of it could be found. "These vines are special," she said, running her fingers along a leaf. "They flourish where others would fail. Their roots run deep, deeper than you might imagine." As we walked, I began to notice it. The vines seemed to move. It was subtle at first, a slight rustle in the still air, a curl of a leaf where none had been before. But as I lingered at the back of the group, I saw it more clearly, tendrils that twisted toward us, their tips trembling as if tasting the air. When I stepped back, I felt something brush my ankle. Looking down, I saw a vine curling around my foot, its surface glistening with dew or something thicker. I kicked it away, my heart racing, but no one else seemed to notice. "We take great care in harvesting," the guide said, her voice drifting back to me. "Only the finest grapes are selected." And of course, the soil must be enriched. After the tour, we were invited to the cellar to taste the vineyard's most exclusive vintage. I wanted to leave. I was unnerved and dizzy, the wine sitting too heavily in my stomach. But something kept me there, a strange pull I couldn't explain. The cellar was vast and cold, lined with rows of barrels that seemed ancient. At the far end, a single bottle rested on a pedestal, its glass dark and unmarked. "This," the guide said, "is our rarest creation. It is not offered to just anyone." The guests leaned in eagerly as she poured a single glass, the liquid inside so dark it seemed to absorb the light. She passed it to me. "Miss Evelyn," she said, "would you do us the honor?" I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to refuse. But their eyes were on me, expectant, hungry. I took the glass, the liquid swirling thickly. The first sip was unlike anything I'd ever tasted. It was sweet and rich, but beneath it was something sharp, metallic. A wave of warmth surged through me, followed by a deep chill. And then I saw them. The faces. In the liquid, faint but unmistakable, were faces, their expressions twisted in agony. They swirled with the wine, their mouths opening in silent screams. I dropped the glass, its shatter echoing through the cellar. The guide's smile didn't falter. "Such a shame," she said softly, and the other guests began to close in, their movements too smooth, too deliberate. I turned and ran, weaving through the barrels as the whispers began. "Stay, stay, stay." The cellar stretched on forever, the air growing thicker, the ground beneath me soft and wet. At last, I found the staircase and bolted up, emerging into the cool night. The vineyard was alive. The vines writhed and twisted, their tendrils reaching for me. I sprinted through them, their tips brushing my arms, leaving streaks of something cold and slick. I didn't stop running until I reached the road, where a single car waited, its door open. I woke the next morning in my apartment, the black envelope on my nightstand. My clothes were stained with dark streaks, and my hands smelled faintly of wine. I've tried to throw the invitation away, but it always reappears. And at night, I hear whispers, soft and insistent. "Come back. It's your turn." I think the wine changed me. My reflection in the mirror doesn't always move when I do. And sometimes, late at night, I feel the phantom touch of vines curling around my ankles. They're waiting for me. And I'm afraid someday I'll go back.